What's up, everybody? Welcome to week 9 of this NFL season. Cherry Pickers here, flying solo today, bringing you the picks. The guys are busy today, so I'll be just bringing you what I have. Last week we had a great week. We went 3-1 in our picks against the spread, and we were a half a point away, or a point away, I guess, from going 4-0. So it was a good week. We're running around 500 right now. So hopefully we'll have some more good weeks like we did last week. In theory, the system does get better as the season goes along because it has more information. But the only thing that can curb that is injuries, and there's been a ton of injuries in the NFL this year. I've never seen anything like it with injuries the way that they've happened. But we'll take a 3-1 week. Hopefully you made some money, you bet responsibly. So let's start off with a recap of last week. So last week, we started off our picks at Buffalo -3 versus Seattle. Buffalo was just way too much. That was an easy pick, an easy cover. The Bills they have too much firepower. Seattle's a scrappy team, a decent team, a team that you can't take lightly. But against a high-powered team like Buffalo, I just don't know that they can hang. Seattle does well against average and below average teams. They play well. Sometimes they win big. But when they get up against teams like Buffalo with a quarterback like they have, and just with a team like they have, they don't really do well. So that was the first pick. We cashed that pick. The second pick was the Indianapolis Colts getting 5 points versus the Houston Texans. We cashed that pick. The Colts ended up covering. I believe they lost by 3 points. But, man, was there some controversy in that game. Anthony Richardson took himself out of the game in the middle of the game because he said he was tired. And if you watched anything with the NFL this week, if you watched any of the shows, if you've read any articles, he's taken a lot of flack for that. He's taken a lot of pushback, and he's been benched in favor of Joe Flacco. So I don't know if the coaching staff is just trying to send him a message and sitting him out for a week, or if they're done with this Anthony Richardson experiment. I've talked about it on the show before. One thing that does really translate from college to the pros is completion percentage. And it's something that doesn't really get better. It's one of those things where if you're accurate, you're going to be accurate at the college level and the pro level. And if you're not accurate, you're not going to be accurate at the pro level if you weren't accurate at the college level. And he's not. He's just not. He's got a big arm. He's a big kid, and he's mobile. He seems like a nice kid. He says all the right things in press conferences outside of telling everybody he came out because he was tired. But he doesn't – you can't be successful in the NFL completing 50% of your passes or less. And, yeah, he hits a big throw once in a while, and that's great. That's good for the clips. It's good for the highlight reel. But they're losing close games that they would win if he could just complete 62% of his passes, and he just can't do it. I watched some of that game. There was a couple of plays there were guys wide open that he would just overthrow. He did have one big drop, which is rare. Most of his incompletions come from bad passes. So he's not starting now. That Indy team was probably going to get better. Flacco brings some stability there. Now, Flacco's still Flacco. He's still going to have a 4-interception game once in a while, or he's going to try to do too much. But he also can run an NFL offense, and I think Steichen and that coaching staff has done a good job. They have got a good team around. They've got the best offensive line in the NFL. They've got a great running back. They've got a couple good receivers. Their defense isn't bad. They've lost twice now to Houston in close games. I think that was the turning point. They're 4-4, so they can still save their season. They had to make a choice. So we cashed there, Indy +5. The third game of this was Philly getting 2.5 points playing Cincinnati. This is the one that stood out most to me. This was the bet that I liked the most, and, man, did it work out. Philly ended up winning comfortably outright against Cincy. I kind of wish I would have bet the money line on this, but I'm going with the system and taking the points here. They just outplayed Cincinnati. They're just a better team. You got to remember, this Philly team still has A.J. Brown. It still has Devontae Smith. It's still got a great offensive line. It's got some really good interior defensive linemen on that team, some good guys in the secondary. They've got a complete team. They've got Saquon this year. who's made some plays for them. I think that they're kind of flying under the radar. Now, they've got some flaws. Their head coach, Nick Sirianni, he's a polarizing figure there. That guy, he's either saying something to the fans, shaving his head, screaming on the sidelines. But that's Philly, as Ryan and I talked about a couple weeks ago. That's how Philly is. They're just that's the kind of the identity of the city. Is they're kind of a wild city. He's kind of a wild man. They're still getting the job done. That's a good team that's going to be in the NFC discussion. For them to be getting 2.5 points against a Cincinnati team that's just been up and down and really just can't get consistent, as they've got some glaring holes on that team. That was a no-brainer. So we started out 3, and the last of our 4 picks was the Green Bay Packers getting, or excuse me, -3.5 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. We lost that game. They ended up winning by 3. We were about a yard away from cashing. They ran the ball down to inside the 5, handed the ball to the running back. He's headed towards the end zone. I'm throwing my hands up in the air. We're going to get an undefeated week. And he slides at the 1. And they kick a field goal and they win by 3. And we had it at -3.5. You'll see that a lot because guys are now being coached. Don't run into the end zone if we can run the clock down and kick a field goal to win. In the past, you didn't see that. And a lot of teams paid for giving the opposite team another minute on the clock while being up by 4. And you've seen teams be able to come down and score a touchdown to win right as time expired or right before time expired. So he did that. We ended up losing that game. That was a tough pill to swallow there. I thought Green Bay had it in the bag. We went 3-1. And there was one other pick that I gave you guys. We got the pick early in the week where Washington got 3 points. So it was Washington +3 before they knew whether Jaden Daniels was playing or not. But then when he was declared healthy enough to play, the line flipped and it became a no play because it was too close to call. But we took Washington +3. So we cashed in that game. And obviously, I'm sure everybody saw that Hail Mary at the end of the game. That was really one of the ones for the ages. It's one that'll be shown in highlight reels for years to come. What an amazing play. I think Washington played that as perfect as possible. Chicago, that's a scrappy team. That's a good team with a good defense, a young quarterback who's showing flashes. Whether he'll figure it out or not, I don't know. Matt Eberflus, is he the answer at head coach? I don't know. They took the lead there with, under a minute to go. And it looked just like 2 young teams with young quarterbacks just duking it out. And then Jaden Daniels throws the ball 65 yards in the air, and it was played perfect by the receivers. You've seen Chicago defenders pointing at the Washington crowd, really kind of being a little bit cocky there at the end. Bounced up in the air. Noah Brown jumps up, snatches it, catches it, boom, win Washington. We cashed there, so we actually won 4 games. We went 4-2 overall because we lost the Thursday night game, but we didn't get either of those picks to you guys. One because the line changed, the other one because, well, it's Sunday and Thursday's over with. So that's a recap of last week. Went 3-1. That's a good week. If we could go 3-1 the rest of the year, or the rest of my life, I would be very rich if we could do that. It's not an easy thing to do. So why don't we move to this week? Before we get to that, I just want to say 1-800-GAMBLER is there to provide the resources and information you need if you feel like you have a gambling problem. 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, we're going to start things off now with this week. We're going to head to Atlanta as the Falcons host the Dallas Cowboys here. And the Falcons are 3-point favorites, but the system likes Dallas getting 3. I see these teams as being pretty close, but Dallas does have, if you ask me, a little bit more talent overall on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. They're pretty close, really, if you think about, the quarterbacks, the receivers, the defenses, the offensive lines are really similar teams. But I just think Dallas is going to be a little bit more explosive, a little bit more able to put points on the board. But I don't know, man. With Atlanta, they've won twice against Tampa. One of the times was in overtime, kind of a fluky overtime touchdown, and where they scored way late to get it, be able to win the game. Then last week they get Tampa with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both out, two of the best receivers in the NFL gone. I mean, you get a game where you don't have to defend those two, and it still came down to the end of the game. I mean, and they beat Philly early in the year when Saquon dropped that pass that would have sealed it for Philly. I don't know. I'm not sold on Atlanta. Not that Dallas is really that great. San Francisco won that game comfortably. The final score was closer than the game actually was. San Francisco controlled that game the whole game. Dallas is up and down though. They've beaten good teams. They beat Pittsburgh this season. They're up and down. The system thinks that these two teams are almost identical. So getting 3 points for the Cowboys, it looks like a good bet. So we're going to take Dallas Cowboys +3 at the Atlanta Falcons. The next game, this one is a little bit scary one for me to bet on just by the eye test. You'd hate to take a rookie quarterback heading to Baltimore, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to take the Denver Broncos getting 9.5 points. FanDuel has it at 9.5. Everywhere else is at 9. So if you're following along, head to FanDuel to get to 9.5. They're playing at Baltimore. Baltimore loses to Cleveland last week. I talked last week about how, what we weren't going to bet on the Cleveland-Baltimore game. I would have taken Baltimore last week. I would have lost if I took that. But I did have the caveat that, Jameis Winston was starting, and nobody has tape on Jameis Winston playing with the Browns outside of a drive, one single drive. There's no tape on him having the game plan. And not only that, but the Browns just play Baltimore tough. Baltimore just seems to not be the same team away from Baltimore for some reason. And that held true. And really, Baltimore should have won the game. They dropped a late interception that would have sealed it. But Winston ended up leading them to the win. Now, Baltimore's at home. They're playing a rookie quarterback. Man, I would not blame you if you skip this game, but 9.5 points is a lot of points. If you would go to FanDuel, buy a half a point to get it up to 10 points, that's probably what I would do, just because 10 is just a better number. Obviously, it's more, but it's also a key number. But Bo Nix has been playing pretty good football. He's using his legs. Sean Payton is getting him to really play to his best, stay within the system. They have a good defense. Their defense is a really underrated defense. Baltimore is just kind of they've got the best running game in the NFL. Lamar is still Lamar, man. He's still, he might be the front runner for the MVP again right now. Who knows? But that's just a lot of points. The system says that's too many points to give another NFL team. Taking 9.5, Denver at Baltimore. That's pick 2. The third game here, we got another game where two teams are rated as just about even with the system. Is the Las Vegas Raiders heading to Cincinnati to play the Bengals. The Raiders getting 8 points here. I don't. That's a lot of points for the Raiders to be getting that many. I don't know why it's that high. Unless there's been some crazy big injuries that I missed out on. But the system does like the Raiders getting 8. Raiders covered last week against the Chiefs. Do with that information what you will. T. Higgins is out again for the Bengals. And I just saw some other news here that they have T. Higgins out, and they also have Zach Moss out. He is inactive. He was listed doubtful, and now he's officially ruled out. He hasn't been practicing. He's got a neck issue going on. So Chase Brown will be starting now for them. So you have a couple of your big offensive players out of the game. You have you're an 8-point difference, which I'm going to check this again because that's just so many points. I don't know if maybe I wrote that. No, it's 8 points at two different places. DraftKings, it's 8, and there's another place that's got it at +8. That's a lot. The Bengals haven't played that great this year. I don't know why. You'd be betting on the Bengals right now. I don't know why anybody would do that. That's just too many points to give up. I'm sticking with the system. I'm going the Raiders +8. So that will be the third pick of the day. The next pick, the Bears head to Arizona. And the Cardinals are 2-point favorites. System likes the Bears getting 2. Arizona's been a scrappy team. They've won 4 games this year, and I believe 3 of them have come at the end of the game with field goals. Chicago, we know what happened to them last week. Chicago's not putting tons of points on the board by any means, but this Arizona defense isn't that great. Arizona's made their money on Kyler basically running around. James Conner still being a great playmaker that he always has been. They've got probably the most underrated tight end in the NFL on their team. They've got Marvin Harrison Jr., and they've got a good coach. So this line is probably right where it should be, but the system thinks Chicago is a much more efficient team. And Chicago does have a good defense. So this will probably be another close game. I wouldn't be surprised if it did come down to another field goal at the end of the game. 2 points isn't a lot. It's not a comfortable number. It's not a key number. But we're going to roll with the system and take Chicago +2 here, see what they can do, see how that matchup goes. They're going to have to score some points. They're not going to be able to put up 15 points and try to just hold down Arizona. Not that Arizona's offense is anything to be really afraid of, but Kyler with his feet can make plays, and they do got those, they've got 3 guys on that offense who are playmakers and who can make things happen. James Conner, you Steeler fans obviously remember him well. He's still making plays in the NFL. As a 49ers fan, I watch a lot of Arizona games. He's got a nose for the first down marker and a nose for the end zone. Harrison seems to be getting really comfortable with the NFL. He seems to be getting a little bit better every week. Hopefully he can mitigate, the lack of speed that he's got with good route running and sure hands, and he seems to be doing that. So, but we're going to go with Chicago. They've got playmakers on offense. That running game seems to be doing well. Williams, it seems to be just getting a little bit better every week, and they have a good, tough defense. So we're going to go with Chicago +2. The next game here. So we've taken all underdogs so far. Dallas +3, Denver +9.5, Raiders +8, and Chicago +2. Now we're going to go with the Eagles here. Philadelphia is a favorite at home playing the Jaguars. They're giving up 7. So Philly -7. That's a lot. I thought Jacksonville played well last week against Green Bay. They gave themselves a chance to win. That Jacksonville team is not nearly as bad as their record shows. They are just one of those teams that you see it in college, you see it in high school, you see it in the pros. There are teams that have talent, teams who will do everything right, and then they'll make 2, 3, 4 mistakes in a game that will take them out of a game. And if you're a fan of that team, you'll be watching and saying, should have won that game. If we didn't fumble here, if we didn't drop a pass here, if we didn't get that penalty called there. And really, the NFL is separated by things like that. The system thinks Philly is about 9 points better, 9.5 points better. They're only given 7. So even though they're given a touchdown away, it still likes them to be able to cover against this Jacksonville team. We just talked about Philly a little bit ago. I don't know what the Jags are doing. They're probably playing for the future. This season's pretty much out now. They're just – they can't put it together. And usually by this point in the season, whatever you see from a team, whether they're, let's say they're struggling to put points on the board, their defense struggles to keep points off the board from the opponents in the second half. They can't run the ball. They can't go deep. Their offensive line can't block. Whoever they are now, they're going to be. You almost never see a turnaround like, for instance, the Giants, the New York Giants, the 2 years that they won the Super Bowl with Eli Manning, those 2 seasons, they were tough during the year, don't get me wrong, but they kind of flipped the switch towards the end of the season, the second half of the season, and they became even better. You don't see it that often like that. I will say, though, last year, the Chiefs, they kind of turned things around there in the playoffs and became a little bit different team. and we're able to get it done and win the Super Bowl. But that's very rare. You just, most of the time, whatever a team is now, they're going to be. So my bet is Jacksonville is probably going to play a good game. Jacksonville, the yards are probably going to be similar, and the opportunities will be similar, but they're going to screw it up somehow by turning the ball over, by fumbling, by dropping passes, and by big penalties. In Philly, playing tough, they're going to win or cover this -7 unless something happens, or this first quarter for the Eagles. I don't think the Eagles have scored a point in the first quarter all year long. That's been a detriment to Philly. So that could be something that could haunt them in a close game. They've got to get on the board in the first quarter. I don't know. It's so weird how NFL teams just, whatever the problem is that they have, they seem to have that problem continue the whole season. And I don't know if it's because there's not enough time to fix some things. Some things have multi-layers of problems that you can't get to because the season comes and guys get hurt. And basically who you have during the season is who you have outside of a one or two trades. Maybe this isn't basketball where you see guys getting flipped all the time. It's not like that in the NFL. I don't know, but we're going to go with Philly -7 points here, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. The next and final game we got right now, and then we'll get to the Browns and the Steelers. We got the Detroit Lions as 2-point favorites headed to Green Bay. System likes Detroit -2. It just thinks Detroit is a better team. I will say last year, Green Bay gave Detroit fits. They beat Detroit on Thanksgiving last year, I believe. But Detroit is playing really, really well. If anybody watched that Tennessee game last week, I mean, you've seen the difference between a high-tier, high-level Super Bowl contending team and one that's not. Mason Rudolph, for all you Pittsburgh fans, you probably keep a little bit of an eye on him. And that was a rough one last week. They just don't have it there in Tennessee right now. That team, their defense is really not that bad. It's a pretty good defense, but their offense was giving Detroit short fields. Their offense was doing nothing really, nothing at all. The offense in Tennessee, they lack playmakers. They traded away a guy that, one of their only playmakers on the team. They've got some other guys who've had a history of making plays, but it's just not happening this year. So if you're a Lions fan, that was probably a fun game to watch. If you're a Tennessee fan, you're drowning your sorrows in caffeine-free Diet Pepsi, I'm sure. So, but Green Bay took care of business. They won against the Jags last week in a close game. Jordan Love, Green Bay, they play great. They have a great coach. This 2 points, they're getting 2 points at home. Wouldn't blame you for taking them, but the system thinks that Detroit is a much better team, to be honest with you, with the numbers that we have. Even with Jordan Love playing great, he's throwing a lot of touchdowns, but he throws some interceptions this season too. Aiden Hutchinson hasn't seemed to matter. That's, as crazy as that sounds, one of the best defenders and best pass rushers in the NFL, going out, not really changing much. Might see the difference come in the playoffs, but the system likes Detroit -2. So we'll recap here. Dallas +3 at Atlanta. Denver +9.5. That's on FanDuel at Baltimore. The Raiders +8 at Cincy. Chicago +2 at Arizona. Philly -7 at home versus the Jags. And Detroit -2 at Green Bay. Those will be our picks. We had a great week last week. We're going to try and hopefully have another good week this week. But let's get to the Browns and Steelers games. First off, the Browns are at home. They are underdogs to the Chargers, the LA Chargers. Hey, congratulations to Cleveland. Big win last week. We've talked on this show every week about Deshaun Watson. We've talked about how he's just not getting it done and having some historically low numbers with that offense. Jameis Winston comes in to get the job done against one of the best teams in the NFL. I mean, average to above average to good quarterback play on that Cleveland team, and they're immediately being competitive. This week is a little bit different of a matchup. Jim Harbaugh's coming to town with the Chargers. Chargers, very old school, very, for those of you that haven't watched them, very run the ball, punt when you don't have anything there, field goal, field goal, field goal. Jim Harbaugh loves field goals, and it's been to his detriment a little bit. He lost the game against the Cardinals because of that this season. He couldn't get in the end zone, ended up losing it at the end of the game. But they also don't turn the ball over a lot. They don't make a lot of mistakes. They've got some good players on that offensive line. They got a good running back there. J.K. Dobbins has had a great season. But there's no flash with this Chargers team. So if the Browns can keep the Chargers to field goals, who knows? But I do think that the Chargers are probably the better team here right now. But again, there's not much tape on Winston. There's not much tape on him with the Browns. There's not much tape on him with this offense. And, could be maybe good Jameis will come out and his corny jokes and his silly sense of humor will get them another win. I mean, L.A., I believe this game is in Cleveland. It's in Cleveland. It's a nice day out. LA had a long flight to get there. Who knows? It'll be a close game, but to see what Nick Chubb can do, see what the Chargers offense does. Like I said, they're not just Justin Herbert's. We're used to seeing him throwing for a ton of yards. We're used to seeing him put up some great numbers. And, he's having games with 130, 150, 180 yards. 1 touchdown, 0 touchdowns, running the ball, just field goals. They didn't invest much in their offense this year. They really didn't. But Harbaugh takes his time. He's a culture guy. He changes the culture to turn your attitude into winning, to believing in each other, to having each other's back, to not win with flash, to win with what we're given. And I'm sure this is going to be more than a one-year project for him. Of course, probably next year, the year after, you're going to see them progressively get better, and you're going to see guys want to go play there. As for the Browns are the Browns. We'll see what they can do. I'll see if Jameis Winston is the answer for the rest of the season, and this will be one interesting offseason in Cleveland with this quarterback situation. So we'll see what happens there. That ought to be a fun game to watch. And the Steelers game this week they might be off this week. I think they're off this week. I don't see Pittsburgh here. So they had a nice game last week. They won again with Russell Wilson against the Giants. Wilson looked even better. He was actually looked like he was firing on all cylinders there. He was throwing with a little bit more accuracy. He's still underthrowing balls, though. I don't know what the problem is there. If he's lost some arm strength, or maybe this rehab with his ankle, or with his Achilles is just taking a little bit off of the ball, or his calf, I should say, is taking a little bit off of the ball. Who knows? But he's just playing better. The Giants made it a little bit closer at the end of the game, but there wasn't really any threat of the Steelers losing. There were some big calls that went Pittsburgh's way, but I still think they won comfortably. And if you're a Steelers fan, you got to be happy with Wilson and what he's done and what he's opened up with the offense. And that Giants team, today the Giants play home against Washington. I don't know about that team at all. I wouldn't be. Who knows? It's a division game there. We're not having a pick in that game because there's just too much uncertainty there with both of those teams. But Pittsburgh did play a good game. They're leading in their division, and they are playing good football right now. So you've got to be happy if you're a Pittsburgh fan. I don't know that anybody expected them to be midway through the season leading this division. I didn't expect it. I sure didn't think that, especially with the way Baltimore was playing, that they would be the leaders. But hey, you play good defense, you score points when you need to on offense. And again, I keep reiterating, a guy like Russell Wilson is used to playing with a bad line. He runs around behind the line of scrimmage trying to find guys open. He will take sacks, but he will make big plays. That's probably what Pittsburgh needed. And the receivers, they seem to really like the guy, and they seem to have some chemistry built. So that will do it for us here. That's week 9 with the Cherry Pickers. We went 3-1 last week. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks this week. Let's hope for another good week this week with those 6 picks. Remember, be responsible with anything that you bet. Don't bet more money than you can lose. Have fun with it. And hopefully we will see you next week with another positive week. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time.
YSN thanks you for watching this presentation of Your Sports Network. For stories